You have all what it takes, Prof, except this fundamental issue of experience. And you just joined a church. And then after joining the church, the next thing you're asking is, where are the pastors sitting? Just on arrival. Don't you think that is unheard of?
Commissioner, I'm very willing to answer questions about issues and my prior writings relating to Israel Palestine. I would, though, like a direction from the Chief Justice if this is appropriate for me to do so. I am aware that the former Chief Justice was disciplined by the Judicial Conduct Committee for expressing views relating to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I am currently a sitting judge of the Constitutional Court, and I've taken the view, ever since I knew I was an acting judge, I have expressed no view on any conflict that involves foreign policy, that involves the domain of the executive, and I've tried to conduct myself in that way. I am very happy to defend what I said and what my views are, but I'm also not sure that I'm entitled to do.
This is the last third question. It's two is that we're taking long. This is a third question.
I want to make a follow-up on the question before you go to the third one.
The one that is uncomfortable to answer?
Yeah.
And then he will say if he's uncomfortable with your one too.
No, I'm just saying the question is based on the article he wrote.
Yeah.
And we're saying to him, we're putting it to him, that it will be our interpretation that you are saying Israel is not a colonial occupier. And if he says, I'm not going to comment on that, that remains our opinion and it will be raised in deliberations.
Well, maybe what we should do is excuse the candidate briefly and let's talk among ourselves. Is it fine? Let's just do that before we proceed. The candidate, I think I must give you a chance to ask your question.
No, Chief Justice, I was not asking a question. I was just repeating what Commissioner Nonchesi said. And he said it's uncomfortable responding to that. So I was saying to him, if that is the stance, it means in the deliberations, I will be allowed to express that view as a correct view because you didn't put a counter argument or seek to clarify it.
Yes. Thanks. No, thank you, Commissioner Malema.
To find a way that the people of that area can share the land and share a future together. That's what I've sought to do. I've tried to be a peace builder in my work. I've tried to engage with peace in Colombia, which is a place which...
Sorry, Prof, you have answered my question.
Thank you.
I should end here.
Sorry, Commissioner Nonchesi.
I think in view of time, I must stop here. Other commissioner will follow. Thank you.
Just a follow-up, CJ.
Okay, thank you.
CJ, follow-up.
Oh, Commissioner Malema?
Yeah, mine is very simple, Prof. Do you still stand by that article?
Mr. Malema, I'm not sure I would write every single phrase in the way I did. I shift my own views as well. But in large part, the necessity to find a way through, to understand the two very divergent and competing narratives, and to find a way for the two peoples to listen to each other and to live together in peace and dignity with respect for self-determination and international law. Those are all things I would still stand by.
Prof, do you still stand by that article? Because you can't have it both. It's either you say there are parts of the article that, given the new information exposed to me, I would rather not keep in that article. So if you stand by it, just say so. So when I leave here, I know Prof still stands by that, or there are these other parts which, with more information and hindsight, is no longer standing with those.
Commissioner, I stand by the thrust of the article, as I've said to you. I think there are changed. We have seen differences over the last 5 years. We have also seen there are currently, and it's not right for me to express an opinion about proceedings before the International Court of Justice at the moment on a number of questions. And as I said, as someone deeply committed to international law, I would also see myself as bound to shift my views if the International Court of Justice finds in certain ways that require me to shift my view. But as I say, I'm not able to express my view on those things. That's inappropriate for a judge sitting in the Constitutional Court at the moment to express views on proceedings currently in an international court, and those may have caused some change to some elements of the article. But the thrust for need for finding a way through to peace, I stand by.
Sorry, Chief Justice. Sorry to interrupt, but Professor Julius, when I first raised my hand 3 hands ago, I wanted to ask you a question about contract, but I'm now going to ask you a question about this thing that's being debated. The reason is because, I always watch candidates here before the JSC. They are asked a relatively inane, mundane question. They complicate their lives, by appearing to be defensive or evasive, etc. Now, I'm afraid that is the impression I'm getting around this issue. And, and it's not a complicated question. You wrote an article and you said you don't buy the story of apartheid, you don't buy the story of colonialism, right? That's fine. We can have debates about that, and apartheid is an international legal issue. And occupation is also an international legal issue. We don't need the views of our top judges in the Constitutional Court on these questions, because South Africa is engaged in the international space, and it has been engaged since 1994. It can't avoid it. So this idea that you say, well, there are certain things have moved along, it gives the impression that you are evading the issue.
Commissioner, I think that's really unfair. There is currently, as you know and you have argued, there's a case currently before the international.
Hang on, Prof. Hang on. When Commissioner Toby says this to you, to say what you are, the way you are responding gives the impression that you are avoiding. It's to your benefit, because he wants to give you a chance to say to him, no, I'm not avoiding, and here is why you shouldn't think I'm avoiding. You persuade him. So he's giving you that benefit. If you don't explain that, he's going to go into deliberations with the picture that you are avoiding. So he's trying to make sure that he's fair to you.
Thank you, Chief Justice, and I apologize if I appear evasive. I do not want to be evasive in any way. I do not see it, and I take that view as appropriate for me to express a view on proceedings. There's currently proceedings which South Africa has brought relating to genocide before the International Commission of Justice, and there's also an advisory opinion that has been requested on questions around occupation and apartheid. I see it as inappropriate for me to answer questions about whether or not this is correct when South Africa has a live case and live interest in that, and the principles are being discussed at that level. As an academic, I would love to do that. I'm not currently just before you as an academic. I'm before you as a candidate for the Constitutional Court and acting as well on the Constitutional Court. And so...
No, Professor Pilches, I'm sorry. I think that the problem that I'm grappling with, you were not here when we had a break, but Commissioner Malema made an example and said, if you just asked JP Mlambo, what do you think about Israel versus Palestine? Without anything, he would be entitled to say, I've not actually formulated views. And in fact, I'm very surprised that you're asking me that question. Can I please get a pass? But he was saying, what is different with you is that you have, in fact, written an article, right? And you have expressed these views. And so many things have happened. And we just want to get a sense that, all right, this is the view you expressed, this is the view that you take. And that's the only context in which I said, should I not be worried that you are evasive? Because this is not something that you are being asked for the first time. You have written about it. So is this the view now that you carry with you in the Constitutional Court as a future judge? And these things are actually very simple. No one is trying to catch you. In fact, personally, I'm actually I was looking forward to this interview. And I thought this question could be dealt with within a minute.
Well, I'm not sure how I can deal with the question in a minute, but Commissioner, as I've said, I'm not trying to be evasive. I've made perspectives in the past. I have expressed where I stand in the past on these things. At the moment, since I was appointed as an acting judge, I have not commented on the last 6 months of horrific events that have taken place in the Middle East, and I've said nothing for exactly the reason that I believe it would be inappropriate for me to wade into that territory, and that that people in South Africa with vastly different points of view should be able to have confidence in me, and that I will fairly, and I think the key thing that needs to be understood is my commitment to fundamental rights. I've defended that in everything I've done, a commitment to international law, which I've defended in everything I've done, and a commitment also to finding ways through to peaceful resolutions of intractable conflicts.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Malema.
Thank you, CJ. Just a quick one, Prof. So I think we are in agreement that you don't have experience as a judge. For the record, Prof.
That's correct. I have only been acting as a judge for the last 2 months.
So now,
Yes.
if I'm presented with a Black African male who comes with a huge experience of a judge, including good judgment writing, and Shemis, at your level, it's you, except that you don't have experience, but also this judge, because I don't buy this thing that only academics can write very well. So for you to be a good writer of judgment, you must be an academic. We've been having very good judges writing very good judgments, and they are not academics. So then through the judgments of this judge, you can see that it's very good. So when you are confronted with that kind of a situation, what do you do?
Thank you, Commissioner Malema. The key,
In line with transformation, yes.
yes, absolutely. The key provision is Section 1742 of the Constitution, as I'm sure you're aware, which says the need for the judiciary to reflect broadly the racial and gender composition of South Africa must be considered. In light of our history in South Africa, it is an imperative to have racial and gender transformation. And so I would think there would be a degree of preference towards the black male candidate, or black female candidate even higher in many ways. What I can offer is, as I've mentioned, a diversity of perspectives, and also perhaps one element of diversity that hasn't really been canvassed thus far. And that is that when I was growing up, people with my sexual orientation were criminalized for having same-sex relationships. And during my lifetime, the Constitution has fundamentally changed my life and that of others in the LGBTQ community, first by decriminalizing our sexuality, and then recognizing our rights to stand shoulder to shoulder with other South Africans in dignity. There are still very few openly LGBTQ judges in South Africa, and in fact around the world. And I remember how deeply moving for me it was to see the first Constitutional Court judge, Justice Cameron, appointed to the court. Why is it so important? Because I think when we look at Section 1742, we want South Africans to see themselves in the court. And so I would hope that my appointment would in some sense advance LGBTQ representation, and also perhaps serve as an indicator to the young lesbian woman I met last year from Katlehong, and the transgender activist who I met who was rejected by their religious community, whose families have refused to accept them and for whom they've been rejected, and who opened up to me about their own pain, that the South African legal and political community seeks to embrace people with diverse sexual orientations, and that she and they and others like them, whoever they are and wish to be, can be authentic in their own identities. And so I would suggest to you that there may be other elements of identity, such as sexual orientation, such as disability, which may play a role in the deliberations of this commission.
Last one, CJ. I'm a very, supporter of LGBTQ community. I'm the only president of a political party who marched to Uganda wearing a rainbow flag, because that is a community that I feel very strong. It needs to be supported. You have all what it takes, Prof, except this fundamental issue of experience. And you just joined a church. And then after joining the church, the next thing you're asking is, where are the pastors sitting? Just on arrival. Don't you think that is unheard of?
Commissioner Malema, you point out, of course, my lack of judicial experience, but I am an experienced professor. I am still young, like yourself as a political leader, and I think we're a young country in many ways. We also have a young Minister of Justice and many young people who committed to advancing this country in the different ways that we have to do that. I agree with you. I lack that experience, but I have a different experience, as I've suggested, which is what I need to be considered on the basis of. So it's not something that I can say to you. I can manufacture judicial experience that I don't have. That's something I don't have, but I do have all these other things. And if you think the things that I have can enhance the Constitutional Court, then that's the way in which I put myself forward for the court on the basis of what I do have. Thank you.
I'm very sorry to do this, CJ, too, but why can't you? Because
maybe Commissioner Malema, because I wanted to say something about the question you put to him. If I can just say something before you continue.
But maybe before you say that, so that you can enrich what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Why can't you just say, okay, this is my weakness. Let me go and work on it. And we ask Chief Justice, I don't know who else, the powers that be, to give you more acting stints. And you just said you are young. There are people who self-disrupt. Don't self-disrupt. You are young. There's nothing against you except this element which is workable. You go and work on it, and then you perfect it, and then come back here. And you're like, your interview is going to last for less than 30 minutes when you come back, because we've asked you everything. But you say, if this is a fair criticism, I accept. Let me go and accumulate more judicial experience. Thanks.
Commissioner Malema, that is one possible route, and of course, that is one possible way that my career could unfold. My caution about that route is what it does is it requires, in a way, it says to academics, your only route to the judiciary is in a way by shifting your career from academia into the judiciary. And in a way, already my university is required to find replacements for me and has been very, very kind, the University of Johannesburg, and always very supportive. But what it does mean is that the academic loses their academic dimension and becomes more of a judicial figure, and then only can get appointed. And I think part of what I've suggested is that if you want that fresh academic perspective, in a sense, partly outside the judiciary, then it's possible that it's not a weakness that one doesn't have judicial experience. One just brings something different to the experience of being a judge. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to say, Commissioner Malema and Professor Vilches, that Professor Vilches chose not to say to Commissioner Malema, you see, Commissioner Malema, I was at the university going on with my business, never thinking about acting in the Constitutional Court until the Chief Justice phoned me. and when he phoned me, he said, the only people you would give an acting appointment if they were academics and senior practitioners would be people who would commit themselves to making themselves available. That's why I'm here, So I just want to say, in part, it's the Chief Justice who has encouraged them to make themselves come forward, make themselves available. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that if necessary, further acting stints can't be given. But I'm just saying the context is that they were minding their own business until the Chief Justice phoned them.